Ladies and gentlemen, this is it. This is the moment. Hello and good day to you. My name is Nathan, and this is Limping Through Models with Nathan. And this is the final part, the grand finale, the end of this build, the end of Grandma's house. Not really the end of it, because the end of building it, of course. Nevertheless, this is part 6, the last part. We finished the rest of the model. So with all that in mind, let's get started. Folks, this is it, the home stretch. Time to put on that crazy roof. But before we do that, it's time to attach the house to the foundation. But before I do that, it's time to do some blocking on the inside of the house. To accomplish this, I measure out the height of the first floor, and then I take a sheet of construction paper and I cut out strips that are matching that height. And then from that construction paper, I cut out the strips that match the areas that I want to block off. The first of these areas is the front foyer and the front bay window area. I say, who needs a shake weight when you have a half-empty bottle of tacky glue with all the glue at the bottom? Once I finally get some glue in the tip, I find a couple pieces of the frame on the inside to glue this blocking material to. I found some grooves in the frame around the bay windows to slide some blocking material in. After a little bit of glue, I put them in the slots that I allotted for these pieces, and it's a really nice snug fit. I've had it up to here with this tacky glue. It has gotten to the point where I just cannot work and I am done with it. But thankfully, I have another bottle on hand ready to go. Tip cut off, and watch this. I squeeze it and look, glue actually comes out. This is the greatest feeling. I can finally get my work done. With the blocking material in place, I do a test fit of the house on the foundation because I'm going to be using super glue to affix it to the foundation. So I got to be careful. I only get one shot with this. So I go around the house and dab a little bit of super glue on the strongest parts of the wall frame. And I use a former micro brush to kind of flatten out that glue. Once that's done, it's time to affix. I'm holding my breath here, making sure everything is where it needs to be, making sure the bay window corners and edges line up. And then I drop it. The point of no return right before your eyes, this is where the house is going to sit on the foundation. Now I'm using my God-given clamps to hold down the foundation as the glue cures, using various methods of clamping, because quite frankly, my hand gets tired after a while. I mean, doing this for 5 minutes can be pretty strenuous and boring and just time consuming. After the house had time to settle on the foundation, I noticed there was a gap at the back door. And so I needed to get some glue underneath that gap. And to do that, I took that same micro brush I was using before and I shaved off a point to it so I can dab a little glue on it. And then once that was done, I slid that micro brush right into the corner as carefully as I could. And then after I got enough glue in that spot, I once again clamped it down with my 5-finger clamping system. With the house in place, I can now permanently affix the front porch to the foundation. I do one more test fit to make sure everything's good, and then I dab some super glue at the bottom of each of the pillars of the front porch. Taking the micro brush and flattening out those dabs of glue, because this is a gel-based super glue, so it could be a little too much if you press it down and ooze out. So using the micro brush, I'm able to get some of the glue off before I affix it. And there it is, looking good. I'm doing a little dance. I'm so happy about this. It is so nice, and it's looking like a house that I can really be proud of. With the ceilings in place, it's now time to rethink how I'm going to do the front roof of the porch. So I go back into the old kit and I pull out the cardboard sheet that had those roof pieces. And I double check to make sure all the pieces are the same size, or should be the same size when compared to where they should lay on the roof. And I cut those pieces out and do a little bit of test fitting here and there. Some of the angles on the sides around where the bay windows are were a little off, so I had to score those and get those as close to where they needed to be as possible. And the same for the other roof piece that I was going to put up there as well. And once I'm happy with where all the angles are sitting, I decide I'm going to go ahead and shingle those pieces magically, and then attach those to the ceiling of the porch. Surprisingly, it only took me about 30 minutes to completely shingle these two pieces, including the staining, which I was really proud of. This little steeple piece turned out to be pretty troublesome. It was really hard to get that in the right spot when compared to the rest of the roof there. So I spent probably 50 minutes trying to figure out a good way to lay it on, and I finally got it to a point where I'm happy with what it looks like. One thing I was not happy about was how the roofs settled down on top of the ceiling. They were almost flat even. So I had to figure a way to make these roof pitches maintain their shape. So I figured the thing to do would be to measure out 4 planks worth of siding from the ceiling up, and then cut out some cardboard pieces that are just that height, and then slide them into the area between the wall and where the roof pieces meet, so that it gives the roof a foundation for that back end to rest on, thereby maintaining that pitch no matter what. And it looks much better now. I like to consider myself a professional now at putting on these ceilings and roofs. And so it's time for me to tackle the back porch, which was a cakewalk compared to that monstrosity that I had to construct on the front porch. So, learning from my mistakes, I attach all the pieces I need to, all the roof pieces that are supposed to go on there, and it was a relative cakewalk when compared to the front porch. And I am more than happy with the result, because it only took me maybe 10-15 minutes to do this. So that's a win. Now this is the part where all the hard work pays off. Those 3+ days and evenings worth of putting those shingles on the roof pieces all comes to a head when I actually attach the roof to the house. Now this roof structure is really interesting in that there's various angles and such that are a part of this overall structure. So I'm putting the front and the back roof parts together, but before I continue, I realize I probably should section off the top level of the house so as not to have any parts where you can see directly through it. So I pretty much do the same layout I did on the bottom section. And once I was finished with that, I was able to attach the second part of the roof on top. Now the front bay window roof sections are really interesting angles. So I have to do some test fitting here, because one of the roofs had to be cut down to be able to fit properly. And so once I was happy with where that actually laid on the pitch of the bay window, that's when I decided to affix everything to the house as carefully as I can and as close to the instructions as I can, because if these angles are off, then it could screw up everything pertaining to how this roof lays out. For added support, I add a scrap piece of 1x8 to one of the sides of the bay window roofs, because it was kind of sagging a little bit too much for my taste, so I figured it needed some additional support. In addition to the 3 bay windows, there's another bay window area that jets out the back of the house, and that's just like a triangular pyramid that just jets out the back, and I center that as best as possible. Now these crazy angles have a purpose, and that purpose is to come to a point where it all supports a chimney that's part of the house. Now that chimney could be the main chimney or the chimney for the furnace, I don't know. But what I do know is that I need to leave at least one of these pieces off so I can fit that chimney piece into that square section once I get it painted and primed and everything. and then put that back roof piece on. Now that the roof is in place, it's time to put in the roof cap. I do this by taking the shingle paper, cutting that into lengths that are about 3 or 4 shingles wide, and then folding those pieces in half so that they form fit around the corners which these roof caps will lay. I feel that I cannot rely on the wet and stick properties of the backs of these roof pieces, so I decided to take some tacky glue and squeeze a little bit into the tube until there's a good coating around the top of the nozzle, and then take a wet micro brush and rub that against that edge to get just a little bit of that tacky glue mixed in with the water, so that I don't have a full force tacky glue attached or applied to this roof. Kind of a watered down tacky glue to get these pieces on. And once I have sufficient glue in the area that I'm going to put the roof cap on, I put that in place. Now be sure to put the roof cap on with the edge that does not have the shingle ridges cut into it. So you're essentially putting it on upside down when compared to how you normally lay the roof shingles. So you keep doing that and keep layering on top of each of the roof caps until you have all the pieces in place up till the apex of the roof piece that you're working on. Now with all the roof caps in place, I apply the same stain I did to the roof. Now one thing I'll probably do the next time I do a shingle project like this is probably wait to stain until I have all the roof and all the roof caps on, because there was a lot more discoloration than I anticipated when I was doing this. So there were multiple layers that I had to put on this to make this roof as uniform as I could. I feel that if I do it all at one time, the next time around, obviously it'll be a lot more uniform, and I won't have to keep going back and forth with the stain. And for no other reason except being lazy, I decided to not do the same roof capping I did on the rest of the house to the back porch roof. I just took a strip of the shingle paper without the ridges and just cut that into the roof and stained it to make it match. Now one thing I like to use with my roofs is black 3D paint, specifically to seal in some of the tar paper roofs on city houses and stuff like that. And also I decided to use it on sealing in the chimney at the top of this house. It's really shiny, so you have to be sure you're either going to put a dull coat on the surface you're going to put it on, or you're going to weather it to the point where that sheen is completely taken off. One last little detail on this house before I continue is this one window I need to put in. So thankfully there's another window piece that I had left aside, and using capillary action, I take some acetate, put that on the window, take some tacky glue, put that on the window, and then drop that window into that hole. Remember those squares that we put in to hide the inside of the roof from being seen from the underside? Well, the instructions call for them to have trim, and I didn't put that trim on yet because I wanted to wait for the roofs to be put in place. So now that the roof is in place, I'm going to cut those pieces out, angle them so that they butt up flushly against those crazy corner edges of the bay window, and hope to the good Lord above that everything lines up. Here's the final result with all 6 sections sufficiently trimmed and ready for the next step. On that go around, I did notice there were some slight imperfections, so I decided to take some of that trim color and paint up some of the trim to make it look nice and clean, because the grandma's house, again, like I've been saying, is a clean house. Now there's more trim that has to go into place, specifically the trim that goes on the bay windows themselves. And so the best way I thought to start this off would be to take the elevation, since those angles are pretty accurate, and start to cut those pieces. So I cut them to the size of the actual wall section of the bay window, but then realized that the actual trim goes to the end of the roof. So I had to recut it to fit it to where it would go to the end of the roof. And with that trim in place, there was some more touch-up to be had. Now here's the shot of the house with all those trim pieces in place on all 3 bay windows. And it's looking really sharp right now. There's some additional flourishes that have to be added to the house as well. There's like these little plastic like sharp thingies that go on the underside where those bay window squares sit. And I mean, they're fancy. I'm not sure what the deal with them is, but the instructions say to put them in, so I'm putting them in. And doing some more touch-up as well. Touch up here, touch up there, touch up everywhere. Another forgotten detail are the steps for the house. So I cut out some of the step material that came with the kit, in addition to some of the planking that was used for the trim. Paint that all the same brown as the deck pieces, and stain those steps the same way I did the foundation. Now here's the house with the steps in place on the back porch and on the front porch. But I'm not quite done yet. So I take my trusty pastel kit I got at Five Below, and I shave off some black pastel onto a piece of paper towel. I'm going to use that to dirty up the roof a little bit, starting with the chimney part where that 3D paint was applied, to tone down the sheen of that 3D paint, and also to add some gunk and stuff along the top where that roof sits. I apply additional weathering to the corners where the roofs meet, kind of to hide those gaps as much as possible, because there's these larger gaps of space where those roofs join together, mainly because of the heaviness of the cardstock of the roof piece. It just kind of forced itself outwards a little more than I was comfortable with. So I'm doing my best to try and obscure that, to keep that from being seen readily by the naked eye. And what we have before you right now is a completed grandma's house with a weathered roof and all the features and accoutrements that come with this house. Nearly, probably 4 months of work done, finished, complete. And that, my folks, is what I call a wrap. I am proud of myself. I really am. Something that was a failure has become a success. And what I have before me is a completed model of Grandma's house. All with the crazy roof angles, all with the crazy wall configurations, the angles, all of that. Done. Finished. Completed. It really is a sight to behold. I am so happy with what I've done with this. You have no idea just how happy I am. Although, there are some improvements that I wish I could make because, I'm a little picky. I'm kind of past that point now. But improvement number 1. Get some shades in this thing. I mean, it's just nothing but black windows. Nothing but black windows. Very boring. And, I wish I would have gotten some coverings for the windows to make shades here and there. Just one of those things I kind of wanted to do after the fact. But, yeah. Oh, the steps are kind of loose there. That's one thing I would have wished to do better. And also, I kind of realized why the model on the front of the package is covered in snow, because there's like these giant gaps in between some of these angles here, which on the picture is covered with like snow because the snow builds up and goes up the crack like that. The cardboard for the roof is really thick in the older version of this model. The one I had before that I tried out has a thinner sheet of cardboard, and had I used that, I would imagine this gap that's here now would be pretty much non-existent, and the roof material would meet up with each other kind of flush, or much more flush than it is right now. But you know, it's not that big a deal. Just get some weathering powder and just scratch that in there, scratch that in there. Oops, and you're good to go. But aside from that, everything is done. This model's complete, and I have a newfound hate for paper shingles, like the ones in the roll, because this took forever to shingle. But this was something that I'm really proud of, and I'm very happy that I was able to complete this. And able to complete this for all of you to watch and see. And so that is the end of Grandma's house. The build is done. Almost. I mean, there is like a garage that goes off to the side, but I haven't done that one, or didn't do that yet. I might later for like maybe some tutorial. I don't know. If I decide to be like, hey, I want to show people how to use paper shingles. Yeah, maybe I'll use that to show you off, but not anytime soon. No. The next thing to do will be to just put this on a place of prominence. So probably on my shelf here somewhere to collect dust like all the other models. I swear one of these days I'll get a layout to put all this on. Or maybe even not get a layout to put all this on, because you know, this is kind of just all a mishmash of models here and there, you know. If you're talking about freelance, that's the epitome of freelance right there. You just throw a whole bunch of models onto a layout and hope for the best. But I want to be a little bit more prototypical when it comes to doing a layout whenever I get to that point. But aside from that, I want to thank you for coming with me on this journey. I want to thank you for subscribing to the new channel. I hope you've done that, you know, because that old channel is going to be going away here soon. So subscribe to this new channel here, like, comment, and do everything you need to do to be back here for the next series of episodes, where I'm going to start on that wild mouse roller coaster. That's going to be a nice little departure from your typical HO scale modeling. So until then, I will see you next time, and I will take my time admiring this piece of handiwork. Yeah. Uh-oh.